Yeah. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get started. We're getting our attendees in. Once again, the Q&A is back up. God, this interface is weird. All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us again. It seems like it's only been 15 minutes since we last saw y'all. And this is another great video for ICMI 2021. And we have Paul, the big man, mostly because of his weight, Elam. How are you doing?
Well, man, now I've got to line up a way to match that insult, Chris. But that's okay. I'll be laying for you. I'm actually doing really well, and I'm really glad to be here.
Okay, so just as a reminder, everyone, just go ahead and post questions. You can put it into Hoover, but the best place to post is in Zoom. On the very bottom of this little window here, there is a place for Q&A. Please ask your questions there. We'd like to remind people, please only post questions there. If you want to leave a comment, do so in chat. If you want to leave a link, please do so in chat. So we're still waiting for some questions to come in. So we're going to go ahead and just start with some of our own until you people go ahead and fill the rooms up. So I'll go ahead and start off with the question. How do you feel about ICMI this year? Certainly we're doing things a little bit differently, but what's been your impression so far?
I think it's great. I think it's another example of how men improvise. It just wasn't in the cards to have an in-person conference. Thankfully, the technology is there for us to gather. And, you know, sort of like we found at XY Crew with our group meetings for men there, it's not quite as good as real life meetings, but, you know, it's not that bad. It ends up with men being able to connect with each other, and hopefully we can connect with the audience here in the same way. And I think it's shaping up real nicely. I am looking forward to we can actually do stuff real world again when there's less insanity in our governance. I don't know how long that wait's going to be or if it's even going to happen in my lifetime. But I would like to see it happen. In the meantime, I'm pleased as I can be to be a part of this.
I'm pushing for 2013 in North America somewhere. So be on the lookout for that.
2013.
2023. I'm going to go back in time before ICMI started and do it right.
Yeah, exactly. There you go. Absolutely. Time travel. I love it.
All right, really, guys, keep those questions coming. So I'll just dive into one of my own questions. So we've been actually talking about this a little before this thing started, but so over the Thanksgiving, my Thanksgiving vacation, I finished reading Red Pill Psychology, which you collaborated on with Peter Wright. I think that is an underrated work in your catalog. What are your reflections on that particular book?
Well, it reflects on an entire relationship that I've had with Peter Wright going back 10 years now. Of all the people that I've encountered, all the other writers I've encountered in this movement, he was, you know, Warren influenced my knowledge. He gave me knowledge that I never had before. Peter Wright has presented a way of viewing life and understanding gynocentrism and its connection to the male psyche and human psychology in a way that nobody's ever done. He's been my greatest influence. So it was an absolute pleasure to offer work to pair up with him to get this done. And I think it should be, as much as Myth of Male Power is the seminal work that we know of on men's issues throughout the ages, and I don't think anything will ever change that. But I think that guys would benefit from reading Red Pill Psychology just as much as from reading The Myth of Male Power. It especially for guys that are ever considering therapy or therapists or have that sort of introspective lifestyle where they're reflecting on things and their own existence, their histories, you know, whether or not they're happy, all those things. The field of psychology has utterly failed men for the past 50, 60 years. It's been, matter of fact, it's worked against men. It isn't just a failure of meeting their needs. It's actively worked against the interests of men in order to coddle female clients. That's what the modern psychotherapy business is. It's what you see in marriage counseling. I have to, I would love to claim more credit or as much credit as Peter, but he is actually the one that started evaluating all that and looking at alternatives for men. And I followed his lead on it. So by all means, guys, get that book. You'll find it helpful, especially if you're working on family of origin issues or a lot of other things you're trying to sort out in life. This will help give you a little perspective on yourself that you won't ever get from the modern psychotherapy industry. Those therapists will tell you your problem is that you have a penis, that you're toxic, that you're an oppressor, the whole thing, the whole wokeism. That wokeism's been in the field of psychology before it ever made it to the media.
Well, I also want to give a quick shout out, and I'm a little bit biased in this, is men-women relationships. And this is personal because it was like the first time you and me ever talked, Paul, is when I reached out to you to help you edit this book for Amazon. But I also liked it because you introduced a new concept to me, toxic masculinity. Now, I've heard what feminists called it, but the way you described it was very poignant, of men throwing other men under the bus to get the attention of women. And that is toxic masculinity behavior. But I'm going to move on to one of our first questions from Mr. 0303. Seen him many times. Thank you, Paul, for all your work over the years. The focus of your latest video was about male self-sufficiency and male power. What would you say is a good strategy to show men their own value outside of women's approval?
Well, I think that question, and thank you for that question, but that question contained the answer. Outside of women's approval is the operative words. Men are born into a 1,000-year tradition of cuckoldry with women. We have been romanticizing women. We've romanticized them to the point that we don't even understand their nature. We have this sugar and spice notion of women, and we're taught women are delicate and women are great with emotions. I don't know whoever met women that really came to those conclusions, but that's what we're trained to believe. And we constantly go into relationships with them and into life facing utter disappointment after disappointment after disappointment, because there's really nothing in the true nature of women that measures up to all the hype and bullshit that we've been trained in the chivalric, gynocentric tradition. So the first thing for men is to get it, that you're the prize here. PUA say that, and those guys, God bless them, they stumble on some good information here. Recognize that you're the one with the assets. You're the guy that is dedicated to work, to succeeding, and women are attached to that in a sort of parasitic way. If you're honest about the nature of the relationship. So I think it's incumbent on men, if they want to work on developing their lives, I think one of the first things they can do is put women into a box for a while. Stand away from them. I'm not talking about, and I'm an advocate for relationships, especially for red pill men. They've been important in my life, they've been crucial in my life, and I believe they're viable for a lot of men, but not until you get women and yourself in perspective. You have to understand that if you're measuring your worth by whether or not there's a smile on a woman's face, man, are you ever missing? You're going to be disappointed, you're going to be broken, and you're going to be sitting there saying, gee, what happened? I did all the right things and it ended up bad. No, you didn't. The right thing is to understand your value. And there's no better place for men to start understanding their value than outside the company of women. It's the company of other men that give me the reflection of my self-worth, of who I am. Women are agenda-driven with men, all of them. And so you may not even get an accurate reflection. I mean, I could go on about this for an hour and I won't. But the point is, if you want to improve yourself outside the approval of women, start by understanding that that approval from women is yours to reject and to pursue your sense of value elsewhere. That's where it has to start. And unfortunately, for a lot of men, it's really difficult because they think if I have, especially guys believe if I have an attractive woman by my side, that completes me as a man. That makes me the envy of other men. I've made it if I've got a nice looking woman by my side. And of course, most men aren't consciously aware that that nice looking woman by your side might be your mortal enemy in 6 months trying to destroy your life. That is not where you get your sense of identity, guys. It's just not.
Jonathan Lawless asks, is it better for men to put their personal resources into improving themselves as individuals rather than trying to change society to make it fairer for men?
I've got to say yes. You know, I just had this on, I'm on the Warren Farrell's White House Council for Boys and Men email thread, and there's been some discussion of this recently. There isn't ever going to be a men's rights parade in Washington. We need to get that through everybody's understanding. The world will never be friendly to men looking out for their own interests. I mean, I hope we can at least understand that. And I'll say, I think it's important enough to say again, we'll never, ever have a world that approves of men taking care of themselves. The world depends on men mindlessly sacrificing to really ridiculous, you know, fake noble ideas in order to extract blood and treasure from them. That is how the world operates. The good news is that you don't have to be a part of that equation. It is voluntary. And it is real important to understand if the whole world is working against you, why try to change the world? I'm going to do another shameless plug for XY Crew. We're not an activist group. We are guys improving our own lives outside the approval of women, outside the approval of society. And guess what? Outside the approval of women and society is the only way men will ever truly improve their lives. There is no path to improving your lives by becoming a scapegoat or a sacrificial lamb for society or for women. There's no future in that. Your future is in what you do for yourself. And so I want to say a resounding yes, absolutely. Don't focus on trying to convince the world that men aren't the pigs they're treated like, because the world is going to reject your message. Focus on treating yourself, maybe treating other men better, maybe demanding better treatment from the world around you, and start shutting people out who don't treat you with respect and with the dignity that you deserve. But I'm not here. I've never been here to try to fix the world's problems. I don't see these problems as fixable. We're broken with gynocentrism, and we will always be broken with gynocentrism. We can still have incredible lives. As a matter of fact, we can have better. I will continue to get emails from blue pill men almost every day of the week saying, she's destroyed my life. I mean, I can't see my kids. Really heartbreaking stories. They're terrible. And I got to tell each one of them, there's absolutely nothing to be done except rebuild yourself outside, even sometimes awfully, of their own families' approval, because men have their own families turn on them when a divorce happens. It's absolutely crazy. But yes, please, sir, it's a great question. Please focus on you. And maybe you can pitch in something for your fellow man in a different way too while you're at it. But definitely your energy is better spent on you than it is on trying to repair a system that is broken beyond repair.
So I think this is going to be a good follow-up question to that from Philip Tanzer. He says, do you think that men and women can reclaim their natural positions in society without the collapse of our current society?
No, I don't really think so. I think some individuals can. I mean, this is sort of what I was just talking about individually. I think, yes, a lot of that can happen. But repeat the question for me again. I want to make sure I'm answering this correctly.
So Philip Tanzer says, do you think that men and women can reclaim their natural positions in society without the collapse of our current society?
Well, it depends, honestly, on what natural positions means. That it does. I think men can do it if a natural position for a man is to be a protector and a provider for a female, and to have authority in the home. He can do that if he's with the right female. But I think also reclaiming their natural place in society is much more difficult for women than it's ever been. Women are so infantilized these days. You know, the word matrimony that we use to call marriage, it was symbolic. We don't call it patrimony with all this talk of you know, patriarchy and what have you. Marriage is called matrimony for a reason, and it's symbolic. Honestly, what was expected at the time that marriage was developed in this way was the time marking when a woman ceased being a child and took on the responsibilities of children and a family. That's what matrimony meant when it was created. How many women right now are suited to leave their infantile state behind and to take on the adult role of a woman who cares more about her family and her children than she does herself? I'm sorry, but the pool of women that we have to work with right now on that is incredibly small. I don't see it happening for a lot of women, but I do think almost any individual man, if that's what he wants in his life, he can create it. But it has a lot to do with screening out losers, which you know, if you're watching yourself at all, and you're active in the dating market, a lot of your time will be spent screening out losers. But it's possible, I think, for any men to create what they want. But are you going to be honored for it? You know, when somebody says to claim their natural place, it conjures up images to me of a time when men were honored for their sacrifices, when it meant something to be a man, that it was a positive to be a man, and people admired men. I don't think you can make the world like that, but you can certainly have a circle that you cultivate in life that gives you that. And I hope I answered your question, sir.
Well, he says, thanks for the answer, Paul. So next question is by Lysander Maybe. Hi, Paul. Glad to be with you and everybody today. I feel that feminism, in its effort to appear to be the force of good, is absorbing and digesting all what's considered good, the cause of Black people, of homosexual people, of environment, and is spoiling those with its toxic mindset, thus doing more bad than good. What do you think about that? And is there some literature proving this point?
I don't know about the literature, but I question the premise that there is any kind of wholesome, healthy intent on the part of feminism anyway. Feminism appears to be about making as many dead babies as possible and about gaining power over men. There's I mean, if you want to talk about the feminism that's written on a piece of paper that says it's an ideology about equality between the sexes, you can believe that model if you want to, but I'm not willing to ascribe any good intent to feminists. I can tell you all the way back to the Seneca Falls Convention, there were men that showed up there that wanted to support women's right to vote. And the first thing they heard from the women in there was, fine, go sit in the back and keep your mouth shut. That's been feminism from the beginning. The feminism that committed arson in the UK and made death threats to many people, violent women. And then you get what's on their agenda. We've got 60% of college students are female, yet still feminists insist on blocking any male support groups in universities. There isn't a good intent. There's just not. Women have had opportunities alongside men for a long time. And yes, I acknowledge back in the day, women couldn't vote. You know, back in the day, men couldn't vote either. And the time between the two wasn't that far. Feminism is a ruse from top to bottom. It's a joke, and it is an evil, cancerous philosophy that has taken over and largely destroyed the lives of women and men. So no, I got to reject the premise of the question. I appreciate what the gentleman is asking, but I can't acknowledge anything really good about feminism to begin with.
Well, in fairness to the speaker, he put good intention in quotes, so he does agree with you on that.
All right, I wasn't able to see that. I get that.
Okay, so the next question comes from Jeffrey. We need a replacement for the American Physicians Association, not physicians, Psychiatrists Association. Have you or any clinicians considered starting one?
I think he's talking about the APA, the American Psychological Association.
Yes, I'm just a horrible person.
Well, here's the problem. I wish, I wish. But it's, you know, I get emails from people looking for psychotherapists that they can see in person. I mean, I have a counseling practice, but there are a lot of guys out there that want to meet with somebody in person, and I get emails from them, and I have nobody to refer them to. That will tell you the state of things. I mean, I can refer them to somebody like Tom Golden online, but I mean, that's about it. There's not enough clinicians out there who aren't brainwashed, either brainwashed or too afraid to speak up. Because one thing that, like, if you're a social worker and you belong to the Social Workers Association, if you said one word critical of feminism, you'd be ostracized for life. The requirement for starting a new association, you would have to have a rather robust group of clinicians that were willing to endure the epithets and slings and arrows and insults and character assassination that would be sent their way if they tried to do it. There's just not that many people in the profession with the balls.
Carl Palmer asks, well, thanks, Paul, for your years of bringing men's rights to the attention of others. What have been your largest surprises, biggest disappointments, and greatest joys during those years?
Wow, that's an intense question. Surprises? I say still the original surprise that when I started speaking up about men's issues, I had no way to predict the intensity of hatred and backlash that I would get. I knew that it wouldn't be well received, but you know, you sort of, when Time magazine starts bashing you, you sort of notice it. And I was just a little bit taken aback by the intensity of things. I was surprised by the death threats that we got at ICMI21 with people calling into the hotel threatening to kill staff and clients at the hotel if we had the conference there. The level of evil that erupts when you start talking of men valuing themselves more than they value women, the level of evil that ensures is absolutely staggering. Joys, man, more than I can count, by far, seriously. I mean, I've made the best friends that I've made in my life. I've met the most interesting people. I have been supported by a really robust group of men and a few women who have gotten behind what I do and helped me. And that has been a totally amazing, wonderful experience. That there are people out there that know, there's people that support my work that couldn't dare possibly say anything because of the positions that they're in life. And I mean, I'm including a handful of politicians in this who could never come out and say, but I've heard from them and urging me on to keep doing what I do. The other thing I have to say that's joyous, honestly, one more shameless plug for XY Crew, but these groups that we run 7 days a week, 365 days a year, and have a cyber shed also always open. I've seen men whose lives have been in utter chaos and destruction begin to sort themselves out and rebuild and find support in that in a way that they can't get anywhere else, I don't believe. And just being able to be a part of that has been an absolute wonderful joy in my life. I can't imagine being without it. I will be doing this at XY Crew for the rest of my life. Perfectly content to do that and nothing else. So that has been a wonderful, wonderful thing. Some of the other disappointments, gosh, I've got a couple of regrets, mainly about my own actions, my own stuff over the years, bad judgment calls that I've made, people I've hurt when it was never my intention to hurt people. And that's been difficult. I've tried to learn from those experiences, but I'm glad this question was asked, because if I look back, everything I've gotten from being part of the men's movement has been positive, and all the bad stuff I've gotten was shit I did to myself. So it's overall, it's been really good.
Well, I want to add to that about XY Crew, because I've certainly gotten a lot from it. And I went back a couple of weeks ago to, just check up on things. I've been away for so long because of ICMI, but I think about it all the time. And it's been such a rewarding experience for me, because ever since I became disabled 10 years ago, my life pretty much just spiraled out of control. And it took me a long time to climb out of that. Just having other men to talk to about things has helped, because I try to talk to people, but most people are like, they hear what I have to say and they're like, well, I don't know what to say to you. It's like, oh, that makes me feel better. My problem is so hopeless, you can't think of anything positive to say. And XY Crew has definitely been a place where I get that. And even to the point that other people told me that I've inspired them. I'm like, what? I'm nobody. I'm not anyone. And they're like, yeah, you're always trying and fighting and doing more and more and more. And
that is absolutely
such a rewarding feeling.
That's 100%. That's 100% true about you too. I've seen it myself.
So I'm going to ask the next question from Ken Murray. Hi, Paul. Thanks for all that you do. Do you know of any good authors of bedtime stories you would read to a 5-year-old boy to set him up to survive and thrive in this very misandrous world, and make sure he doesn't end up a casualty of the crazy ladies? His mother is a rabid feminist. Thanks, pal.
Absolutely. I have an answer for this guy. It's called the Brilliant Bob series, and it is a series of red pill for boys children's books that are absolutely awesome. You can find them on Amazon. Brilliant Bob. Perfect for a 5-year-old.
By Ken Gilbert.
Yes, absolutely.
So here's a question from myself, actually. So you're back to doing talks on YouTube, which everybody's welcomed with open arms. I sure have. And loud applause, I think. So how do you feel? Do you have a renewed sense of inspiration and energy before and since you've started up again?
Yes, I do. And part of the issue, I haven't produced a lot. I mean, I just came back to writing again, and for all of you who were in the comments welcoming me back, thank you. You don't know it maybe, but it makes a difference, a big difference. When you get that kind of support, it is inspirational. I hope to be very soon back to doing this more regularly. As many people who know me and some of the guys in the men's movement knows, my partner of 20 years, Stacy, has been battling metastatic cancer for the past 2 years. It has been one hell of a fight. It's been very difficult, but recently we got very good news. She's significantly improved in ways that we had no hope for just 2 weeks ago. And so that frees me up. I've had the responsibility of caring for a partner who's sick for 2 years. It hasn't allowed me to do a ton of writing, but I am back at it. I will be producing more. I want to talk a lot about how men handle themselves in relationships. And I have some ideas for other essays I'm going to be doing in the future. I do have renewed excitement, absolutely. And I will be back banging keys very soon. And banging keys and pissing people off, it's kind of what God set me out to do.
Well, if you need a beta reader, always think of me here. I'm happy to, I enjoy your writing.
Yeah, but I'm not going to call you a beta anything. You can be a proofreader, but you're not a beta. That's not happening.
Okay, how about an omega reader?
All right, omega.
All right, so our next question is from Sean Goldenthrope. You know, it seems like, Vern, you're always asking his questions. If something isn't anti-feminist, can it be pro-men? Isn't everything that advances the cause of men necessarily antagonistic to feminism?
That's an interesting question. I don't think so. This is where I'm a big advocate for taking feminist words, their word for what feminism is. They say it's for equality between men and women. And I think that is a notion that should be shoved down the throat of the entire female class every day of their lives. You believe in a movement for equality? Fine. Get out of your own car and change your tire. Bring your purse when the dinner check arrives. Sign up for the military. Be subject to the draft. Find yourself in prison for the crimes you commit. If we take feminism literally, then I want feminism. I really do. And I want a lot more of it than we've ever had. But of course, that is not feminism. So I think the ultimate answer to this gentleman's question is no. I don't think you can be pro-feminist and support men in any way. I just don't, not if we're interpret feminism to be what is actually practiced versus what we find on paper.
And to that effect, I think the way to approach what you're suggesting is that people become egalitarian. In my view, egalitarian is that you support men and women, black and white, all the races, all the genders, what have you, that everyone gets equal representation in society. Now, me personally, I devote more towards men because that's who needs the most help. But there isn't really like, well, you can be a feminist and men's rights activist. No, you can be a men's rights activist, you can be a feminist, or you can be an egalitarian. And it is possible to be an egalitarian and be a men's rights activist, but not an egalitarian and a feminist. Would you agree with that, or am I off base?
I think it makes perfect sense. I mean, I think that's as good a model as any that you can work with. You know, I am supportive of some women's issues. I'm supportive. I find it crazy that right now, young girls in athletics are getting pushed out by biological males for the sake, and we're feminists on that issue. There's crickets coming from so-called women's advocates over this when the use of trans politics like bullies are to go in and silence anybody who opposes them, silence anybody who points out that they're biological men. They're actually men beating women, which is like, man, what, that's like a guy with a high IQ putting himself up against somebody who's mentally retarded and then calling themselves the champion. That's what these trans athletes and trans politics are doing. I think it's unfair to women, and I support any women who want to fight back against that. So there's legitimate women's issues, and there's a couple of others. I won't go into all of them, but I support fairness and dignity for every human being. I just don't support privilege, and that's usually the only option I'm given when it comes to women. There's just a few exceptions.
I do want to say that we've kind of run out of questions, so please, if you have any questions whatsoever, please ask them. But, I'll probably say something controversial here. One of the women's issues I support is tampons, that there should be no tax on it. And the reason why is I don't want women leaving bloody messes everywhere they sit. And if they can't afford a tampon, let's give them a free tampon just to avoid that.
I knew you'd have a way to improve society. I think that's wonderful.
Do you got a question, Vernon?
Not from the audience just yet, but I got a kind of a response question to what Paul was saying earlier about the trans athlete problem. So how do we incentivize women to actually fight back?
I don't think you can. I think, the fact is women are silent about trans athletes taking over women's sports because if it doesn't, most women aren't athletes. Almost all women are not athletes. And so it doesn't affect them directly. So they don't have any kind of emotional interest in saying anything. I look for backlash on this. It's coming from conservative men for the most part, the backlash on the trans politics and trans people pushing their way into an easy way to dominate a sport because they get to compete against inferior athletes. I just don't see women as a whole being inspired to do anything about that. I just think they're, as individuals, are usually too selfish. If it's not affecting them in the moment, they don't care.
To stop against evil patriarchy and seeing men as this big, great threat that they couldn't do anything about, and then do something about it. But now, dealing with a minority smaller than themselves, they seem scared, like, oh no, we can't say anything. It's ironic. It's a cosmic joke, really. And someone told me earlier today, well, you shouldn't be so bitter about it. I'm like, I'm not bitter. I'm laughing my ass off. This is the funniest thing I ever seen.
There is a side of it to me that is hysterical. It is absolutely poetic karma in many ways, but it's still wrong.
It is.
And I don't think it's fair. But then again, it's not my problem either. I'll say that I support young female athletes being able to compete against other girls because there's no other way they can compete. They're just going to go out there and get their self-confidence and their abilities destroyed by superior athletes, and there's nothing to stop it. I mean, so perhaps one of these days the parents will get together like they did with the schools and something will give, but so far, no dice.
So Carl Palmer asked a follow-up question to an earlier question. What has been some surprises that you've experienced during your time in the men's movement?
Let's see. Well, I mentioned the vitriol was, even though I should have expected it, it was a bit of a surprise. I'm also, I'll say this, I'm surprised at some of the cowardice. There is a contingent of advocates who won't call themselves MRAs, because MRAs is a dirty word, that are constantly trying to find acceptability with the media. And I'm surprised at how much cowardice is in them. I've been thrown under the bus a few times by some of these guys. And I get that we have different approaches. You know, just like MLK and Malcolm X, totally different approaches to things. Both were necessary in their time. I believe that fully. But there is a contingent of people in the so-called men's advocate community that like cocktail parties with people of influence and who want to rub elbows with powerful elites and who work very cautiously to make sure, and I'm not going to mention any names here. You may have some of them speaking at this conference, I don't know. But there are a group out there who are really just sort of not getting much done and patting each other on the back and making sure everybody knows that they're not like those disgusting MRAs. And I've seen that a lot in this area, and that's been an unpleasant surprise. But I guess I shouldn't be too surprised.
George McConnon asks, don't you think that if women were drafted, it would just lead to more male deaths? Wouldn't they just take all the safe jobs?
Well, I don't think it would lead to more male deaths if it were done correctly. You know, there is a lot going on in the military in terms of support positions. You could draft women into all kinds of places. And yes, there's still not going to be a sense of equity. And I'm not even looking for that. I don't want women serving alongside men in combat roles. It's foolish. And men will die because of that. It's a terrible idea. But there is a ton of things that women can do, everything from nursing to administrative jobs to quartermaster, working in the rear with the gear. Women can and should, if men are going to be inducted, women can and should be inducted and pushed into those positions to serve out of the way of the men who are actually doing the dangerous jobs.
So our Q&A has come alive again. Thank you, everyone. We got a new question from Jeffrey. What do you think can be done about the transgender push in schools? Kids believing they were born into the wrong body. Can you comment on Jeff Younger's situation? It would be great to have him speak.
I have to say I'm not familiar with Jeff Younger, so I won't be able to comment on that. I do think there's a way eventually. I mean, part of me really wants to believe that there's something of a big awakening going on right now in the United States anyway, that there are parents starting to come to school. But I mean, they've got the FBI threatening parents at school board meetings. Are so terribly intimidated by parents showing up and exercising their voices at schools. I think that could easily morph into taking on the transgender issue too that's going on. Parents, when they're at it, you know, I'm sorry, but 99% of the world is not transgender. We don't have to have the entire majority bowing to the politics of these people. I think they should be treated with dignity and respect like anyone else. I honor whatever, I don't care what they want to call themselves or whatever. But when you start bullying kids around in order to further a transgender political issue, I think parents should stand up, and I think eventually they will.
Vern?
Sorry. So Jeffrey's got another question. I know of parents who are terrified to say anything. They can have their children taken away if they refuse to comply with the affirmation model claims. It's not really a question, it's just kind of a statement. Sorry.
Well, yeah, there's a consequence for standing up for what's right in a world where what's right is unpopular. It's always been that way. There's a risk every time you speak up. That means people have to speak up louder. I mean, if they want that to change, I mean, I don't have any kids in school or anything like that. It's certainly among the issues that are really important in my life. It's not exactly real high on the list. I'm worried more about male suicide and a whole litany of other problems. But like it or not, you know, these things happen and people have to push through them in order to get anything done. It means you're going to have to roll the dice and take a risk and maybe be willing to pay a price to do the right thing. And as long as parents care more about feeling safe than they care about the well-being of their children's education, then nothing will change.
So we got time for about one more question. I do want to remind people to use the Q&A sections for just questions. If you post a comment there, it's kind of unfair to other people because we might accidentally read them. And so please just post them into the chat if you just want to make a comment so we can get to more questions. So the last question we're going to ask today comes from Don Laufendale, who I get the privilege of doing a live Q&A with for this conference. Paul, do you foresee any steps towards equality for men or reducing particularly unjust laws for men and boys in any area whatsoever? Child custody, reproductive rights, rape, sexual harassment, affirmative action, anything?
I think maybe in the next 20 or 30 years that shared custody might find its way. It's starting to find its way into state law as we speak. And these things tend to have a domino effect. I know you got people like Greg Ellis out there working on this issue, many others out there. It is starting to happen in some places. And of course, then it gets down to whether or not you can enforce it. And there's always challenges, but I would say a couple of decades, and there's a real good shot at shared custody and easing of the child support issue. But that's about the only place. I still think overall, men's freedom is contingent on what they build for themselves in life and their good decision-making about risk-taking. Those things, I mean, it's still fair to say that the one thing that all divorces have in common is that they start with a marriage. If you get married, you are marrying the state. It is not, that's not even a question. You are absolutely married to the state. And long after she's gone, the state will be there turning your life upside down. Men can protect their rights by not engaging in matrimony until they change those laws. We got our life in our hands, folks. We do. We've absolutely have to own that or we're lost. But the idea, again, like I say, 20 years, maybe shared parenting, all this other stuff, we won't, in 50 years, the American Psychological Association will still have no more clue about why so many men kill themselves than they do right now. They will still not understand it's a gendered issue. 100 years from now, it'll be the same way. I'm sorry, that's the way it is, folks. The world does not care about the individual lives of men. They care about men as a productive group that serve a purpose. And the moment we deviate from that, we're hated. That isn't going to change. There's no movement that'll change that. The only thing you can change is what you change inside, what you change up here in your head, and the decisions you make with people in life. And if you do that, you can still have a great life. But the idea of being a traditional man in a blue pill marriage, earning a living, taking care of kids, no, that's foolish. It's foolish. Anybody that looks at that and thinks it's a good deal is a fool. And until we change that, these things won't change either. And that's my 2 cents on it.
Okay, I thank you for coming out today, Paul, and I thank all the attendees for asking such wonderful questions. Apologies that we couldn't get to all of the questions today. Be sure to post your questions into Elam's live Q&A Q&A section, and I invite Paul to take a look at that at a later time and answer any questions.
I will be on Hoover this evening, and I will answer questions as best I can.
Awesome deal. And just as a quick reminder, what are some best ways that people can reach out and see your stuff?
An Ear for Men on YouTube is the place I recommend people go to. Also, you can go to paulelam.com, where I have selected 25 of my favorite talks and videos and put them in one place embedded. It's a good library. There's no charge for it. Just come on in and you can reach me through the contact form at paulelam.com.
Let's also give a quick shout out to XY Crew that it is a great place. Me, Vernon, can testify to this, and we're not paid for our answers. I wish we were, but we're not. But it is a great opportunity to really discuss your problems, because all of us are men, all of us are going through it, and all of us understand. So membership is as cheap as $5 a month. So definitely check it out.
It's a pretty good deal for what we provide. We made this accessible for everybody. And I want to echo that too. We see men at XY Crew change. They come in and present their problems, present their challenges. There's a ton of red pill wisdom in the rooms, people to listen to, great feedback and support. And most of all, importantly, everybody in there wants to hear your story. Men have so few places they can just honestly tell their story and tell what's happened to them in life. And XY Crew delivers that in spades. You get a great supportive audience. People will get to know you, your life circumstances, and it's a great asset for the guys who keep coming back there all the time, and there's plenty of them.
Plus, as a bonus, you get to talk to Paul, and he's just like everyone else there. It's like you think Paul's this great big man, like, oh my God, what do I say to him? And it's like, dude, just talk to him like normal. He's pretty chill.
Well, I hope so.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming out today, Paul.
Thank you both for doing this. You guys did a great job. Thank you for keeping the ICMI alive in a real hard time to do it.
I really appreciate that, Paul.
All right. We've got X-Man coming up next, and Vernon is going to host himself. So give him hell. I'm just kidding. Go easy on him.